The door opened at exactly the wrong moment. I froze in the hallway with a grocery bag hanging from one hand, staring at my roommate, Maya, who was standing in front of her bedroom mirror trying to change into a dark blue dress. For one terrible second, neither of us moved. Then she grabbed the nearest sweater and pulled it against herself, while I turned toward the wall so quickly that the grocery bag nearly slipped from my fingers. But what happened next was something I would remember for the rest of my life. Instead of getting angry, Maya took a shaky breath and said softly, "Help me finish." Those 4 words had nothing to do with what I had accidentally seen. She wasn't asking me for anything inappropriate. She was asking for help because her hands were trembling too badly to fasten the tiny clasp at the back of her dress. And within minutes, I would discover that the reason she was trembling had almost nothing to do with the dress. If you believe kindness can change someone's life, and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of someone's biggest transformation. Maya and I had been roommates for almost 11 months, but I couldn't honestly say we were friends. We were polite. We shared groceries when one of us forgot to shop. We took turns cleaning the kitchen. Sometimes we watched television together, but most nights she disappeared into her room with her headphones on, and I respected the invisible wall she had built around herself. She was the kind of person who smiled easily for strangers but became quiet whenever anyone asked how she was really doing. I had always assumed she was simply private. I didn't know she was hurting. That evening, I had come home earlier than expected because my shift at the restaurant had been cancelled. I carried the groceries into the apartment and heard music coming from Maya's room. The door was slightly open, and when I knocked, there was no answer. Thinking she had headphones on, I pushed the door open a few inches and stepped inside. That was when the accident happened. I immediately turned away, apologized, and waited in the hallway. A moment later, Maya came out wearing the dress properly, her hair falling over one shoulder. She looked beautiful, but there was something in her expression that made the beauty irrelevant. Her eyes were red. She handed me the grocery bag and quietly asked if I could help her with the clasp. I stood behind her, carefully fastening it without looking anywhere except the small hook at the back of the dress. She kept staring at herself in the mirror. I asked where she was going. She hesitated before telling me that she had been invited to her younger sister's engagement party. I smiled and told her that was wonderful. Maya didn't smile back. Instead, she whispered that she hadn't seen her sister in almost 2 years. That was the first crack in the wall. As she explained, I learned that Maya's family had fallen apart after their mother died. Her father had blamed Maya for not being there during their mother's final week because Maya had been working in another city. It hadn't mattered that Maya had rushed home the moment she found out. It hadn't mattered that she had spent months afterward paying medical bills and helping her father financially. In his grief, he had turned his anger toward her. Her younger sister, Emily, had believed their father. One argument became another. Then months passed. Then years. Maya had stopped trying. Now Emily was getting engaged, and someone had sent Maya an invitation. She had spent the entire afternoon deciding whether she should go. I told her that if she wanted to go, she should go. Not because she owed anyone forgiveness, but because she deserved the chance to see her sister again. She looked at me through the mirror and asked what I would do. I told her I would probably be terrified. She laughed for the first time that evening. Then she admitted that she wasn't afraid of seeing Emily. She was afraid Emily wouldn't want to see her. That sentence stayed with me. Sometimes rejection hurts less when it happens immediately. The worst pain comes from spending years wondering whether someone might still love you. Maya left that evening with tears in her eyes and hope she was trying desperately not to show. She returned several hours later without the dress. She was still wearing the same clothes she had left in. I knew immediately that something had gone wrong. She dropped her purse beside the sofa and sat down without taking off her shoes. I didn't ask questions. I simply placed a cup of tea beside her and sat across from her. For several minutes, there was only silence. Then Maya told me that Emily had hugged her. I smiled. But Maya's tears began falling. She said their father had refused to speak to her. He had walked past her as if she were a stranger. And during dinner, an aunt had quietly told Emily that inviting Maya had been a mistake. Maya had left before dessert. She thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, Maya received a message from Emily. She stared at the screen for almost 10 minutes before opening it. Emily had written that she was sorry. She had believed things she shouldn't have believed. She had been angry because she missed their mother and didn't know where to put all that grief. She said she didn't expect Maya to forgive her immediately. She only wanted to try again. Maya read the message 3 times. Then she put the phone down. She told me she didn't know how to forgive someone after being hurt for so long. I told her she didn't have to forgive all at once. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a door you opened. Maybe it was a road you walked slowly. Over the next few weeks, something changed. Maya started meeting Emily for coffee. At first, the meetings lasted 20 minutes. Then an hour. Then an entire afternoon. They talked about their mother. They talked about childhood memories. They cried over things they had forgotten and laughed over things they thought they had forgotten. But Maya's relationship with her father remained broken. She struggled with that. She kept asking herself why a person who had once carried her on his shoulders could now look through her as if she didn't exist. I didn't have an answer. Nobody did. So I did the only thing I could do. I stayed. Sometimes kindness isn't a grand gesture. Sometimes it's sitting beside someone while they cry and refusing to make them feel embarrassed for having tears. Months passed. One rainy evening, Maya came home holding an old cardboard box. She placed it on the table and opened it. Inside were photographs of her mother. There were dozens of them. Maya told me Emily had found the box in their father's storage room. At the bottom was a handwritten letter. It was from their mother. She had written it years before she died, knowing she might not have much time left. In the letter, she told Maya that she had never blamed her for being away. She said she knew Maya had been working because she wanted to help the family. She wrote that her greatest hope was for her daughters to remain sisters, even after she was gone. Maya read the letter silently. Then she pressed it against her chest and cried so hard that her shoulders shook. That night, she finally understood something. She had spent years trying to prove she wasn't guilty of abandoning her mother. But her mother had never believed she had abandoned anyone. Maya's guilt had been a prison built from grief. And the key had been in her hands the entire time. A few weeks later, Maya asked her father to meet her. She didn't know whether he would come. He did. They met at a small cafe on a Sunday afternoon. Maya told me afterward that she had rehearsed everything she wanted to say. But when she saw him, all the rehearsed words disappeared. She simply told him that she missed him. He looked down at the table. Then he cried. Not the quiet tears Maya had expected. He cried like a man who had been carrying an impossible weight for years. He admitted that after her mother's death, he had needed someone to blame. Maya had been the easiest target because she wasn't there when the worst moment happened. He said he had convinced himself that anger was easier than grief. Maya didn't excuse him. But she forgave him. Not because what he had done was acceptable. Because she didn't want his bitterness to keep controlling her life. Their relationship didn't magically become perfect. It took time. There were awkward conversations, painful memories, and days when old wounds opened again. But they kept trying. And sometimes trying is the most beautiful form of love. Almost a year after the night I accidentally walked into Maya's room, I came home to find her standing in the kitchen wearing another blue dress. She looked at me and laughed. This time, the door had been wide open. She told me she was going to Emily's wedding. Her father would be walking her down the aisle. And Maya had been asked to give a speech. She was terrified. But she was smiling. She told me that a year earlier, she had believed her family was gone forever. Now she understood that sometimes people don't return to the way they were. Sometimes they become something new. Something more honest. Something stronger. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of the three sisters and their father standing together at Emily's engagement party. On the back, Maya had written 4 words. "Thank you for staying." I stared at the photograph for a long time. The truth was, I hadn't done anything extraordinary. I hadn't fixed her family. I hadn't erased her pain. I had simply been there when she needed someone. And maybe that's what kindness really is. Not saving someone. Not solving every problem. Sometimes it's simply refusing to walk away while someone finds the strength to save themselves. Years later, Maya and Emily remained close. Their father became a quieter, kinder man. The family still carried scars, but they no longer hid them. They celebrated birthdays together. They took pictures. They remembered their mother without letting grief destroy the people she had loved. And whenever Maya and I talked about that first night, she always laughed about how embarrassed we both had been. But then she would become serious. She would tell me that if I had reacted differently that night, if I had laughed, judged her, or made her feel ashamed, she might never have told me what she was going through. She said the accident wasn't what changed her life. It was what happened after the accident. Someone chose kindness when embarrassment would have been easier. Someone listened when judgment would have been easier. Someone stayed when walking away would have been easier. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, healing, and the unexpected ways people change each other's lives. And before we reach the final line, leave a comment saying, "Kindness begins with staying," if you believe that sometimes the person who needs us most doesn't need a miracle, they just need someone who won't leave. Because you never really know what someone is carrying behind a closed door. You may only see the awkward moment. The mistake. The silence. The tears. But there may be an entire story underneath it. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give another human being is the simple courage to look beyond the moment and say, without judgment, "I'm here." Take your time. You don't have to face this alone.